Mute Megan while she's calling.
I'll put myself on mute and
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending the third of QTLC and Movement's Future Freight Energy Hub webinars. We're pretty excited this afternoon to be bringing you another set of experts and be in the privileged position of bringing independent information. So the Future Freight Energy Hub program, if you haven't heard about it, is about focusing on road emissions primarily, and specifically about providing fleet operators, hubs and others with practical examples of the road and transition to net zero. That's warts and all. This includes a quarterly webinar, a quarterly newsletter. If you haven't seen that one, it's pretty fantastic. And also a range of small grants and funding for freight hubs or precincts that are early in their transition to net zero and need some bespoke information. So far we've been able to deliver that to a variety of areas: Allcuts Transport, Tisby, Port of Brisbane, the Brisbane Airport and Gatton Smart Farm so far. And while I'm speaking on Gatton Smart Farm, in a fortnight's time, we are bringing the biggest zero emission truck show to Brisbane in downtown Gatton on our website. You'll see the link, and we've got 6 of the latest zero emission technologies, as well as a variety of experts talking about the road to net zero. So I know Tim that you'll hear from today is talking about the transition to net zero, because I guess we at QTLC, and I think like most companies, can be a bit attracted to shiny and bright things and they're new trucks and new solutions. But the answer isn't always new trucks. In fact, sometimes that can be the most expensive, and our focus on that detracts from our ultimate goal, and that is implementing vehicle efficiency, route optimizations, low emission pathways that can also yield substantial savings and reduction in emissions. So that's what we're focusing on today at your request, at the request of hubs and customers and fleet operators that have said, we'd like to buy a new truck, but we also want to know a little bit more about what we can do in the interim, because we're not to the position of buying those vehicles yet. So as I said, we've got 4 experts today who've actually crafted and implemented some paths to do this, and it's in keeping with our theme, warts and all, because if we're not honest about how this journey goes and our experiences on it, then we can't leverage our benefit to get there on time. And they're also sharing their analysis on how it went, which is fascinating. The format today is a webinar, an hour and a half long. You'll hear from a range of presenters in 10-minute presentations, and we've allowed 5 minutes of questions after each one. If you pop your questions in chat, we'll see them as we go, and we'll attempt to answer them either straight after that speaker, or we've got a short bundle of time at the end where we can do that. And we're aiming to get you out by 4 o'clock this afternoon. So thank you for joining us, our third Future Freight Energy webinar. And today, to kick off the proceedings, we're going to hear from Movement's Dave Coleman. Dave's got a really long background in transport efficiency, and I won't go over it all, but he's going to be sharing from Movement's paper from 2023, The Road to Zero, which has some really fascinating insights if you haven't read it. Dave, if you want to take off now. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Lauren. Hopefully the right presentation is up on screen now. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us at our webinar today. I'm Dave from Movement. We advise fleets on how to decarbonise. And certainly, as Lauren said, over the long term, electric trucks are the best pathway forward for reaching zero emissions in road freight. But the upfront costs of vehicles are quite high, and we're expecting them to remain high for the foreseeable future. And of course, you'll need the infrastructure to get the energy into those vehicles, which may not quite be ready yet for your particular situation. So today we're here to talk about the many other things that you're able to do that are cost-effective ways to abate carbon, and they can be used right now. And the secret is really to avoid, to shift and to improve emissions from your current vehicles and from the supply chains they operate in. So I'll give you an overview of these pathways and the benefits that are available to you right now, because they do make your operations more efficient, more productive, and more profitable And so then you'll be ready for electric trucks when electric trucks are ready for you. So I'd like to start with the results of a survey that was being conducted by Isuzu Trucks. It was released just last month. They surveyed over 1,300 fleet operators around the country, from small owner drivers to local, regional, big national fleets, government fleets. And overwhelmingly, the sentiment back from the survey is that reducing emissions is it's really extremely positive from the feedback from all the operators. But the thing that I take out of some of the numbers is there's no urgency to actually do that. So, and at the same time, the window to achieve net zero emissions is closing fast. So you can see the top numbers there. Over 90% of fleets intend or are considering to have a zero emission strategy in the future, but there's only 10% that are actually considering that for right now. So 80% of fleets are sitting back and waiting. And, you know, we have clients who are looking to achieve net zero targets with their fleet, and their targets are for like 2050, 2040, even 2035. And that's only 11 years away. And you can see in the bottom there that just around 30% of fleet owners surveyed expect that battery electric trucks will be the primary vehicle in their fleet over the next 10 to 15 years. So that's out to 2039, where only 30% of the primary vehicles will be battery electric. So you can see that diesel trucks are going to be around for a very long time yet. And meanwhile, the other key finding from this survey is that the cost of fuel is the #1 challenge for business fleets. And you can see that's because, you know, the price of diesel is the highest it's ever been, really. It's been up around $2 a litre and more at the pump. This year, certainly, it's dropped off the last few weeks, but you can see it's around double what it was in 2020, only 4 years ago. Now, that was COVID period. It might be an anomaly, but back in 2016, it was down at $1 a litre. So, you know, it's doubled in at least 8 years and maybe 4, and I'm sure operators' freight rates haven't doubled in that time. So, you know, the only thing you can be certain about with diesel prices is that they will remain volatile. But the thing is, if you save fuel, then you reduce your emissions. So therefore, you know, reducing emissions is good for your business. And so at Movement, we like to talk in terms of 4 pathways to abate emissions, and they can all be done simultaneously. And of course, they all have extra benefits that go well beyond just the carbon savings themselves. And so at the top left there in green, fleet replacement or repowering of trucks, you know, batteries and hydrogen powered trucks, they are the best long-term path. They're 2 to 3 times the cost of a diesel truck at the moment. But in the meantime, there's these 3 other things that we can focus on. So switching to renewable fuels in orange there on the right, you know, replacing diesel with biofuels is, you know, it's the next best path to achieve 100% emission reductions. But it does come at a cost, because the cost of biofuels is more than the cost of diesel. So you'll pay a higher cost per kilometre for a renewable fuel switch. But down on the right there, with through fuel efficiency, you'll be saving money. So reducing fuel consumption, it obviously reduces the energy inputs and it reduces the emissions outputs from your vehicles. And of course, improving your energy efficiency sets you up well for zero emission trucks when they come along, because you improve the driving range of your vehicles. So that range anxiety can be mitigated to an extent with the actions that you can take now in your current fleet. And then lastly, we have optimizing your supply chain in dark blue on the left. And, you know, this is about improving the operational efficiency of how you supply your networks of customers. And by redesigning your supply networks, we call it a no regrets pathway, because for every truck trip that you save, you're saving 100% of the emissions and you're saving 100% of the costs. So, you know, the saying is, you know, the greenest mile is the mile not driven. And you do that through improving the use of your current assets at a fleet, vehicle and a whole system level. So in this slide, we try to set out how each abatement pathway has its own emissions reduction potential and its own costs of doing that. And so if you think in terms of that colour scheme from the previous slide, and I've got them down there on the right-hand side. You can see we're ranking them from the greatest emission reductions to the smallest on the left-hand side of that line. So clearly, you know, battery and hydrogen trucks save 100% of emissions at the tailpipe. So they're the long green bars at the top left there. You'll see a little bit down there, a smaller green bar for hybrids. So that has lower emission savings because you have a battery, but you're still using plenty of diesel. Then if we move further into the orange bars, you know, 100% renewable diesel will save 100% of emissions, and that really is the least disruptive way to reduce emissions in trucks. But it's costly, as I mentioned. So you can actually blend renewable diesel in with normal diesel to save money. And so at a 50% blend, you can see we've just got a break there in the line to show that 50% emissions is achievable at that 50% blend. And then down a bit lower, we have B20, which is a 20% blend of biodiesel with diesel. So that has a smaller emission saving again. Then when you look in terms of the light blue, you know, they're the vehicle efficiency actions. So training your drivers and how to drive more efficiently can save you more than the 20% emission savings. And then down a little bit lower there at the bottom, we have other lower impact things that can be done with aerodynamic kits on your vehicles, changes to the way you operate with tyres, reducing idling, all saves diesel in those different amounts. And then in the middle, we have those darker blue lines with the different actions as far as the optimisation pieces go. So improving backloading, just putting freight in those empty trucks that are coming back from their forward trip, it saves emissions. And so now on the right, we try to compare, you know, what the costs of implementing those actions are. And you can see, you know, it's both from a capital and an operating expense point of view. How much does it cost to put those into place? So you can see the orange with the renewable diesel has quite a cost comparative to down in the lower sections here, where our light blue vehicle efficiency and our dark blue optimization actions really have low costs, and they have quite big emission savings relative to that cost. So it's quite good bang for your buck in terms of implementing those actions into your current supply chain. And so, you know, of course, the upfront capital and operating expenses are what's front of mind for owner-operators and fleets generally. But, you know, when you start assessing those actions over their lifetime, so over a few years of getting the benefits of those actions, that's what really reveals the major differences in the net return on investment that you put into each of those different actions there. And of course, you know, the efficiency in the light blue and the optimization in the dark blue show very good net ROIs. And of course, that's all about just improving your business, and it all goes straight to your bottom line profits. And of course, data is critical for any of the actions. Like with anything in business, you need to measure what you're about to manage. So it's all about establishing where you're starting from. And, you know, every fleet's different. You've got different shapes and sizes of vehicles. You've got different mixes of vehicles within fleets. Your fleets are doing different tasks on different routes for different customers. So every fleet's different. So you really need to set your own baseline of where you're starting from. And then it's about picking an action that suits your fleet and putting it into action and reporting on it so you can gauge your success. And of course, to do that, you really need to set up front an evaluation framework. So once you do start measuring, you know whether you're winning or losing with that particular action. And then you try another action and you do it all over again, and you report and you move on. And of course, you learn lessons through each of those phases. So you need to share those lessons within your team, but of course within your broader ecosystem of partners and suppliers and customers and all the other stakeholders in your supply chain. So we say at Movement, you know, decarbonisation, it's not easy, but it is simple. It's down to avoiding, improving and switching the emissions out of your fleet and out of your supply chains. And, you know, we've got three great speakers here today who are going to speak about each of those areas and what they've been able to achieve within their businesses. And, you know, I'm sure it wasn't easy for any of them. but I'm really looking forward to hearing how they went about it. So we have Megan at Bestrain and their customer BC Sands, who have implemented supply chain optimization software. We have Tim at 7R Logistics, who, for nearly a decade now has had a driver incentive program that's achieved some really great results, which Tim will go into. And then Abby at Lendlease has got some great case studies about using biodiesel and renewable diesel in construction sites where the engines are the same engines that we have in our trucks. So some great lessons there for all of us. So I'll hand back to you now, Lauren, and hopefully Bestrain is ready to go.
Yeah, thank you. So Megan's going to be presenting with Mark, and thanks for the wave, Mark and Matt. Bestrain has a great logo, delivering solutions for complex logistics problems, and I think that's what we're talking about today. That's what Dave has articulated, and they do great work with big companies, JB Hi-Fi and Coca-Cola Amatil, Australia Post, and it's easy for us to think that it's those big guys that can do this, and it's easier for them, and they've got more money and time and all those skills. But I'm pretty excited by what Megan, Matt, and Mark are going to talk about today, because they're not the uber big Australia Posts and Coca-Cola Amatils, and they've also got a value proposition. So I'll hand over to you without sharing all the glory, but it's an amazing story. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you, and Dave, thank you. So lovely to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. At Bestrain, we work with businesses to drive efficiency, and so we feel the best green mile is a mile that's not driven. And I would like to introduce Mark and Matthew Parsons. I've been lucky enough to work with BC Sands for 8 years, and I have a wonderful description of their journey to share.
Oh, is my voice coming through? Is everything working? I'm impressed. Has it really been 8 years? It
has. It has.
Okay.
Shall I share, or do you want me to share? Do you want to share the slides?
If we can, well, you can put them up and we can go through it. Yep. And I know we've got 10 minutes and people's time's valuable, so we'll get stuck into it and get it going, because obviously we want all the people listening to get some value out of this. So as Lauren aptly put, we're not Coca-Cola Amatil. We don't have a lot of money to spend on this. And while we would like to be doing this because we're trying to be green and get to net zero emissions and all that sort of thing, we're doing it for very commercial reasons. And the commercial reasons are that we're saving money and giving us a competitive advantage, and not really our primary objective is not to be green. And I'm not saying being green is not a good aim to be, but as a byproduct, it's certainly great to see. So anyway, just to give you a brief rundown, and please send me questions because I'm very interested in interacting with you. So send your chat questions through so that we can interact as much as possible, because you'll get more out of it and we'll get more out of it. So BC Sands, established in 84, 40 years ago. We sell building and landscape supplies. We've got 2 locations in Brookvale and Tarrant Point. We run 30 trucks, and most of our deliveries are what we call uglies. So we're not like Australia Post that can just do nice little boxes. We've got uglies like firewood, mesh, bricks, blocks, bulker bags of sands, things that aren't easy to efficiently allocate. I know lots of people probably get deliveries from Woolworths and Coles for home delivery, and they've got totes that are all the same sizes, and they've got cold foods, frozen foods, and ambient temperature foods, and they all have the same size basket, so it's very easy for them to optimize routes on trucks. Whereas with our stuff, it's a little bit different. If we can go to the next slide, Megan, we're trying to look at how we're going to get here. Matthew, please come in and help me out when I start to stammer or say a few too many times.
So the main things that we wanted to work on with what we wanted to achieve is we wanted to do more with what we currently had. So increase our capacity using our existing resources. So getting our trucks to do more deliveries to the, group the suburb locations together, make sure that we're fitting as much on each truck as we can at possible, as well as eliminating paper as a byproduct, reducing emissions as a byproduct, and improving our customer service factor as well. So if we want to go to the next slide, we can do a little bit of a brief overview of our fleet. So we've got quite a few different various trucks. So we've got small trucks, medium trucks, large trucks, we've got crane trucks, we've got tipper trucks, we've got flatbed trucks. We've got a very flexible fleet, but it can be quite problematic when we're looking at optimizing it. So there's a lot that goes into that. So if we go on to our next slide, so you can see we've got large scale tippers. On the next slide, you can see our long reach crane trucks. And then on the slide after, we got a little bit of everything else. So when we're looking at our journey to optimization, these were the problems that we faced. So what we call an allocator, our logistics person who was in charge of the trucks, had a lot of input from a lot of different sources. So the drivers, if you wanted to, all the drivers are saying, oh, you're working me too hard, I want to go home, I've got this appointment, I've got that appointment. Your customers, oh, I need the delivery first thing, I need it now. Your management saying, oh, we need to get this happen, we need to be optimizing the fleets. And then you got to look at the routes as well. You might have one customer needing it first thing, but it makes more sense to do it this way or that way. So there's only so much that an allocator can do by himself. Hiring a second allocator wasn't really a question. As you can see, this was our old process, which was very manually based, very paper focused. The sales team struggled to be able to see what could and couldn't be added onto a load. And if something changed, it was a major drama to try and scramble to reorganize. So this is an example of an easy load for us. 6-ton truck, 6 bulk bags, nice and simple. The next, we have a fiddly load, loose product, a pallet of bricks and some small bags. And then we could have a really fiddly load, which could be multiple loose products, bulk bags, some fiddly stuff, plus mesh on top. Technically, all still fits on the truck, but it's hard to have a system that can work with that and make it all very optimal. So what we really needed was a competitive point of difference. And this is how we've done this. And these were the main 3 types of optimization that we wanted to solve. So when we're talking about optimization, it's not just coming from the one point of view. We want to look at how we optimize how orders are taken, how we plan those loads, and then how we plan the routes as well.
To do the deliveries, yeah.
Yes. All right. You want to take over?
Yeah. For the technical gurus in the audience, this is probably a slide that will resonate with them. So the customer rings up, he's got information, the type of products he wants, the type of truck that he needs to deliver them. Does he need a 5 metre each crane, an 8 metre each crane, a 17, a 21 metre crane? Does he want the bricks and blocks and sand and cement there on a certain day at a certain time? Are there overhead wires? Are there restrictions that we need to accommodate? So there's a whole lot of information that comes through from the customer that dictates the time and date of delivery, the products, and the type of truck. That goes into our reservation system, which we have the type of trucks that are available, the other orders that are pre-booked, and looking at our customer service policy. So which are gold customers who get VIP treatment, who's paid for a specific time delivery, who's got an all-day window where we can massage the route to achieve the best optimization of the trucks on the route without missing our delivery promise of delivering in full on time to those customers. Once the system optimizes, this is a Best Train Descartes product, but I'm not pushing. There are lots of different softwares out there that do this, but we're using the Best Train Route Planner Descartes solution, which as Megan was saying, we've worked with 8 years with, and we've had quite a few dramas on the way, but we've got it tweaking now, but it's a continual work in progress, and it goes pear-shaped before it goes really well. So none of this was without its dramas, as David mentioned in his intro. The routes are dispatched to the drivers, and the drivers get the information through their handheld mobile device. They go and do the deliveries. They take photos of the deliveries. The information comes back. We send the receipt to the customer with the deliveries. There's a whole lot of notification that goes on so that they know when the delivery is coming, what's the ETA, if it's in a window, and then we can get reporting from all that data. And I'm sorry if I'm going a bit fast for those people to keep up, but I don't want to exceed our 10 minutes, so that you just get a brief overview of this journey. Okay, so this is what our salespeople see. Like, you can do this online, or you can do this by ringing up, and that shows the availability of trucks for the delivery, and the salesperson can see what's available, make sure that agrees with the customer's requirements, and book the truck accordingly. With the website, there's the option of 24/7. Obviously, we don't necessarily have to be open, and somebody can deliver, put a booking at 11 o'clock at night and get a delivery 7 o'clock the next morning, assuming that is available. When the orders are put together and go into Route Planner, they organise the routes so that as David said, the mile you don't do is the best mile that you do. So, you don't get money for carting fresh air. So you want to make sure that every mile you do is actually delivering product. So maximising the payload of the truck and getting the efficiency of the route to minimise any backups is what they specialise with.
So one of the other things that we implemented was this self-service kiosk. So previously, with our old system, the driver would go into the allocator's office, grab their paper dockets, and then go out in the yard and say, this is what I've got on my next run. Now, with this system that we now have as well, there's a kiosk out in the yard where the yardies can see which load is coming in next, which driver it is, what time he's going to get there, what's on that delivery, and they can get that pre-packed and ready so that when the driver gets in there, they just load the stuff straight onto the truck, and the driver can get straight back out onto the road for his next delivery. And this is actually one of our drivers and our yardies' KPIs, is that we want to have 15-minute turnarounds in the yard.
And just for context, like, we do same-day delivery, so it's not like you can close off deliveries at 3 o'clock and then plan all your routes. Like, this is a live dynamic thing changing as the day goes on.
So we had a lot of problems in terms of the loads. Like we mentioned previously, they're quite complex. Conflicting commodities won't get placed on the same trip. So we did a lot of back-end work with Route Planner to get all these loads to work together. And obviously it has been a difficult journey. There's always people who are going to be afraid of change and new technology. We had quite a few drivers that weren't comfortable using the mobile device, and they were like, oh, why are we changing? We've got a system that works. Yeah, well, this works better. So let's have a look at the benefits.
Yep, sure. So with the benefits, credit to Megan for putting these slides together to help us out. And for context, it only goes up to 2023, but I had a look yesterday, and the 23-24 numbers are similar to 2023. So we've not gone backwards, but it's the fuel usage decreased by 18%, delivery value per driver hour increased 34%, and deliveries per driver increased 26%. And that's with, all those optimizations that we talked about previously. So it's the numbers look good. The next slide shows the average deliveries, which I just talked about. So it's now $585 or $84
It's gone up
which
again.
it's gone up again, but that's, there's obviously inflation going on there. So there's been inflationary tend to that as well. With the truck utilisation, like on this at a high level, red's full capacity, green has some capacity, and yellow has a lot of capacity. So you can see we can get the utilisation of our fleet
At a glance.
at a glance to see what's got a capacity, so that we can do 2 small loads on a small truck if there's capacity, or vice versa on a larger truck if there is availability. Next slide, please. Yes. Oh, and of course, as I mentioned before, like, we're doing this for very commercial reasons, and one of the opportunities that this system has been able to give us is that if you want the delivery in 2 hours and you're happy to pay extra for it, well, guess what? We won't be quite as efficient, but we'll give you that time window, but you'll pay for it. And that certainly helps the coffers and offsets any inefficiencies.
So we achieved 10% on emissions and fuel savings, and we've built that ability to grow. What I mentioned in the beginning, where we wanted to do more with our original assets.
Yeah.
We've minimized errors in terms of optimizing the sales process and the yard process, making sure everything's loaded correctly. And with things like the truck utilization, we now have a better snapshot of our business, and we can, see things like what our best assets are and, where we need to expand.
Okay.
Cool.
Where I hope lots of questions have come in, because I'll be keen to engage with people who are having similar problems, or ready to start the journey, or halfway through the journey.
There's no questions yet. It's
Oh.
crazy.
Well,
I have one. Sorry, Megan, did you have anything to add before we start with questions? And audience, I'm asking you for some.
Oh, just a comment that you can have the best software in the world, but if you don't have the tenacity and the vision and the passion, you don't get the best results. So I'm in awe working with BC Sands, just the pragmatic approach to making a difference. It's the way to work, and it's the way to make change.
we appreciate all your help, Megan, and
Yes.
yeah, we've had some ups and downs in the process.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
No, I think it's an amazing story, Mark. It's incredibly impressive. And I like you being upfront that you're not driven by ESG, social cause. This is about the bottom line, and the yields that you've sort of presented at the end talk to themselves. I was going to ask a question, but I won't. There is an audience member who's written in: are we able to install sensors to trucks to monitor the fuel and emission efficiency of each truck dynamically? I'm not sure if that's for you, Mark. Bill, do you?
No, we've got a product called Geotab, which is installed, which gives us a whole lot of truck intelligence stuff. I'm sure we could probably get some of that information, but when they say dynamically, I don't know whether it would be like instantaneously, but like, harsh braking, and we measure the fuel efficiency.
It'll show us excessive idling and
Excessive
stuff like
idling,
that.
yeah, PTO engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we haven't specifically measured that, but I think it's something that we probably could and should do. Yeah, because that would be another pathway to look at the efficiency of the fleet. Yes, best timing of maintenance. Yes,
Yeah,
agreed.
for sure.
I just had one for you, just around, before you put these systems in, did you have any way of gauging, like, empty truck trips and the utilisation? Apart from your own gut feel from your experience in the trade, was there any sort of measures that you started with?
Great question, David. And we had bugger all visibility. There was a pile of papers that, you know, looked something like this, that went out every day, and whether they were done efficiently or inefficiently, we had no idea. I mean, I remember one guy coming to me and saying, I just went to Oatley with 1 tonne of something or other, and another driver came in and said, oh, well, I just went to Peakus, which is next door, with 1 tonne, and having 2 1-tonne loads on 2 separate trucks is obviously super inefficient. And when they both come there and come back, and that's the sort of thing, it's like, how much of this is happening? How much more efficiency is there? And like, if the allocator's having a bad day, he's just getting the work done without paying any attention to how efficiently it's being done. I mean, on a good day, an allocator is every bit as good as route planner is, but if he's having a bad day, or if he's sick, guess what? You know, you've got no efficiency. It's just straight out the window.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And I think another big thing with what we had previously is that we didn't have any reporting capabilities. Like, all of that information was just stored inside the allocator's head. And so there was no way for management to kind of look at previous days and go, were we being efficient this day? Were we, you know, utilizing our resources to their maximum capability? And now with our new software, obviously, we do have that ability now to kind of see if we are optimizing as much as we can.
Yeah. And do you feel you've picked up any sort of new customers or new business by, you know, this increased capability that you have, where you know you can get product to people when it's needed?
Definitely. We've, as Matthew was saying before, like, we're doing a lot more with a lot less. And I think that has been the, from some of Best Train's other customers, they've been able to, you know, get a whole lot more volume through with an existing fleet because of the optimization that's been able to achieve through the booking and planning side of it, which, you know, to do more with less is obviously what you want to do, and all the benefits flow from that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a great story. Mark and Matt, are you able to stay with us till the end? Because I anticipate that there might be a few more questions as it goes.
So. Yeah. And we definitely will. Yes. Get your questions going, guys.
Thank you. We spoke a little there on driver behaviour and the role that drivers have in optimisation, and the next speaker is Tim Jensen from 7R Logistics. So he's actually been, at 7R Logistics, been providing solutions for the bulk food grade liquids, sugars, natural gases since 1969, and has been running driver behaviour programs for quite a while. So he's come along this afternoon to share with us the learnings there, real world data, and what real capacity that driver behaviour has to influence the bottom line. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, everyone. Share some slides. Yeah, so thanks, everybody. Just to give you a bit of a background, we did quite a bit of work some years ago with Volvo. Used to run an international driving competition on the most fuel efficient driver that existed. And a couple of years in a row, some of our drivers won that actual competition. So we took back the learnings out of that, and we sat down with them and said, what are the things that you've done differently that resulted in, you know, the good results that you've had? And one of the drivers in particular he won the Queensland section of that, and then he went on to the Australian side of it. And I'd watch his numbers between those competitions, and he would practice really, really hard. And I looked at it and thought, well, if you can do it now, that means you can do it every day of the week. You know, what can we take out of that? So out of that was our driver incentive program that was born. Slide there. So the key parts of the driver incentive program. So in 2014, we started the program. So the key points of the program was it had to have some measurable parameters. So that was, you know, back years before that, there wasn't good measures of how someone drove a truck, whereas the likes of the Volvos and the Scanias these days have some really good parameters that we can measure, and it shows the driver of how they're driving the truck. It's not me saying that they're doing a great job or a poor job. It's what the actual truck registers, and they have an app on their phone so they can see exactly how the numbers that they get from that. one of the other key parts we had around that was the publishing of results. So on a daily basis, we would publish those results, and then they would, at the end of the month, we would give our drivers a bonus based on that. And a couple of points around that was with publishing the results, we had a few of our drivers that one time we would have had from the highest to the lowest score. And we had a few of the guys that would say, well, just make sure I'm not on the bottom of that list. So that was really one of the other key parts to that. And then the third part was the incentivizing the results. So with the drivers, with the different score levels they would get, we would give them different bonuses at the end of every month, depending on the score they got for driving that vehicle. So, and in that period of time, we would sit down with all our drivers, go through some of the key parts that made a difference to them, and said, well, you know, these are the parts of this that will get you a really good result. Here we go. Sorry about that. Over the years that we've been operating it, it obviously has a big impact on the driver awareness. So one of the things that we've found, it makes a massive difference is in how the driver operates. They operate the vehicle a lot safer than a normal driver. For example, if they want to get a good score, they would need to back off the accelerator a long way early, not use the brakes as much, all of those things. And so what happens with that is that they tend to drive a little bit slower than a normal driver just driving about their business. Their foot will come off the accelerator earlier before they crest the hill, which is saving fuel, and then they won't need to use the brakes as much. Obviously, fleet maintenance, that was a part of that. So obviously, you know, brake usage is about a quarter of what it would have been prior to that. So, you know, we save money on brake and tyre wear. One of the other key parts for that was the fuel usage as well. We back in 2016, the Green Truck Partnership did a study on us, which I'll talk about shortly, but we saved about 5% of our fuel bill at that point in time. But as the years have progressed, they've got better and better, and we're probably about an 8 or 9% reduction in fuel usage there as well. Incidents, accidents, obviously with our guys, with them driving a little bit slower, they're a bit more calmer as they drive. They're not in a hurry. You can't be in a hurry to get good numbers. So that gives them a lot better. We've had a very good safety record that's related to that. And oftentimes I have people come to me and say, I was following one of your trucks the other day. Great big following distances between the other vehicles, which is what we want to see. Obviously, the other part of that is our reduction in our carbon footprint and our emissions. So obviously, that's become an important part of transport these days. Everyone's looking for, you know, all our customers on the upside are looking for that reduction in carbon emissions, and we can play a part in that as well. And the other part of that is obviously their professional pride as far as the driver's concerned. We have a lot of our drivers that get quite competitive with other drivers, and they view themselves as a professional driver and take quite a bit of pride in that they have a really good driver score. And even some of the parts we do with that, some years at the end of each year, we'll give trophies to guys that have had an over, you know, a score of over 90 for the entire year. And so we find that really drives, you know, people to really strive quite hard to get good results. One of the other parts, so this is the slide around the scoring. So you'll see there driver number one, who's quite a high scoring driver. So he had a score of 95, 2.7 kilometres per litre. His brake applications are nine brake applications per 100 kilometres. And then his coasting time, which the coasting time is the amount of time during the day that his foot is not on the accelerator. So 19.1% of the time, his foot's nowhere near the accelerator. You see down the lower line, driver score of 50, which it's still a pretty reasonable driver. That's not a poor driver on the roads by any means, but it's probably a mid-range type driver. You can see there the fuel consumption in that one is significantly different, 22% different. Brake applications, you can see there's nearly, you know, over 4 times the amount of brake applications used of what a high scoring driver would be. And then the coasting time there is 10% of the time his foot's off the accelerator. So it's quite a difference there when you look at that of, you know, savings as far as fuel is concerned, savings there as far as brake wear is concerned. You'll see down the bottom slide, if you can see that all right, that the Green Truck Partnership in 2016 conducted the study of what we'd completed, and across the entire fleet there was a 4.5% fuel benefit. And keeping in mind, obviously, that, you know, back in 2016, fuel was a lot less expensive than what it is today. So, you know, the savings, I think we worked out there on that one that there was about the cost of our bonuses that we paid to our drivers, we got about a fourfold return on what we paid the drivers on their bonuses. So it was a no-brainer, just completely in that fuel space. But then also there was the other things that have amounted over the years where we didn't really factor in initially, what was, you know, the safety components and all those other things that have tracked along behind it, and the reduced maintenance on the vehicle fleet at that point. So we still continue to work pretty heavily in this space and keep driving those savings forward, and obviously, you know, those safety benefits as well. And if anyone's got any questions around that.
I had one, Tim. I guess that's awesome. As a logistics company, you're providing obviously haulage services for a range of customers. Have they shared in, you know, the benefits? Have they leveraged off them? Like, are they as excited? Are they aware of what significant these numbers are?
Yeah, I think so. We have some customers that really value this and some that don't. Like, for example, BOC Gases is one of our key customers, and for the likes of them, they're very, very keen on what it drives as far as safety is concerned. And so that's one of the key parts there that's helped us in that space, is that our drivers are, you know, very, very safe drivers. Sorry, there's a question there from Mark. I think maybe you can see that.
Yeah, Tim, did you have to get the drivers into the habit of not leaving their trucks idling when they were getting loaded? And also, how is the bonus structured?
Sure. I think there's probably some idle there in those ones. I think most of our guys were used to that, and I think most of our trucks switch off on idle as well. They'll only have a 2-minute idle and we'll shut the truck down if they're not moving. What was the other question? Sorry, Lauren.
How is the bonus structure?
Yeah, so the bonus structure is basically a tiered system. So it's, you know, $75 or $100 depending on where they get in the tiered section. So if they get a score of between 80 and 90, it's the, you know, the $75. If they get over that, the 90, it's 100. And then we also have a bonus structure at the end of each year. And to get that bonus structure, they've got to have had got a score of over 80 for the year as well. So we tie all that in together a bit. So there's a real incentive for them to actually have a good hard go at it. And maybe a couple other points around that just to help there with that is that it becomes a real habitual thing. It takes the drivers quite a while sometimes to get a good score. And then once they've figured out how to get a good score, that becomes their driving habit every day of the week. And whereas in prior times, we might send a driver trainer out the driver drives perfectly for the day and then goes back to his old habits the next day. Whereas this here is like having a driver trainer in the truck with you every minute, every second of the day.
And Dexter's asked probably a question a bit relevant to that. What was the biggest factor in changing driver behaviour there?
I think the biggest one is to I spoke to most of our drivers back in those days individually, and I would sit down with them. And sometimes I would take a screenshot if they had a good day or a bad day, and I'd send it to them. And then over a period of time, they went, okay. We had some resistance around it originally because I think a lot of drivers didn't want to do it because they thought if I do this and I don't get a decent number, then I'll be viewed as a poor driver. So we would have some that would go, I'm not interested, I'm not going to do this. But over time, we got more and more engagement from everybody around the system, yeah.
Dylan asked a question then about uptake, which you've sort of answered, but how is it now?
It's good now. We would have about 95% of our drivers are getting those bonuses, whereas, you know, probably even back 5 years ago, maybe 50%. So it's a continual cultural thing that you have to continue with the drivers. So, sorry, David had a question there. Yeah. So what it does there, David, is basically, you know, one of the key parts is, you know, as a driver is coming to the top of a hill, for example, they hop off their accelerator early and they'll drop some kilometers off and let the vehicle roll over the top of the hill, and then it'll roll down the hill, and then they won't be, whereas typically what drivers would do, drive the top of the hill flat out, and then 200 meters down the hill, they have to use the brakes. So whereas this here, they're having to really think about that and going, well, hang on, I don't want to use my accelerator too much, and I don't want to use my brakes too much. I need to manage this really well.
And Mark Parsons, how do you compare drivers of different trucks?
That's the great part about this. When we first started the program, we used to go, we had a kilometre, we were doing it based on fuel, but fuel was no good to us because fuel might be a little bit different load or a bit of a different terrain that would burn a certain amount of fuel. Whereas the scoring system that's in the trucks, it scores them regardless of whether they're driving up and down hills all day or driving along the flat all day. The smarts is smart enough in the vehicles that it actually scores all of that and puts all that together.
Awesome. We'll pause there and go to our next speaker. We do have more time for questions at the end. Tim, are you able to stay then?
Yeah, absolutely.
To the end? Awesome. Okay, so guys, if you do have questions, pop them in the chat and we'll endeavour to get to them at the end. But our next speaker is Abigail Haywood. She is with Lendlease. She's going to take us on a journey today of, you know, some of the journey and trials that she's been implementing into construction. And that is another really hard to abate sector, but it starts with trials and doing real world stuff and sharing the warts and all. So we're really happy to have her here today to share her knowledge. She's actually just picked up a big award, the Pathfinder Award for Property Council of Australia for personal commitment and bringing creative solutions to big world problems. So congratulations, Abby, and I won't take your thunder, but the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'll just check. Can you see my slides?
We can.
You can, lovely. So I'm just going to take you through some research on how we found a pathway to decarbonise construction activities and some case studies and some advocacy that kind of fell out of the needs that we found during the research. And as was mentioned earlier, the reason we're talking about construction is a lot of the engines are the same, the big heavy machinery that's in the transport sector, so there are parallels. And Dia, who we partnered with from University of Queensland on the research, is in the audience as well. So if you need have any questions around how does this translate into transport, then please add them in. Dia will be able to help. So just to give you some context, if my slides will move. Oh, goodness, as always. There we go. So to give you some context, so Lendlease is a 1.5 degree aligned company, and we've set ourselves ambitious science-based emission reduction targets. So that's to be net zero carbon emissions by 2025 for scopes 1 and 2, and to be absolute zero by 2040. So that means no emissions, and that's for scopes 1, 2 and 3. So that means no offsetting. So very bold there, particularly on the absolute zero target. So here's a roadmap, high-level roadmap on how we're going to get there. It's all on our website. You know, there's a lot of information there, but we're just going to talk about the top one today, which is the zero use of fossil fuels in construction. So to answer that question, we partnered with University of Queensland to really try and understand, and that's the research that we're presenting today. So construction is a major source of emissions. About 23% of global carbon emissions come from construction, and 5.5% of those are the fossil fuels that power the machinery and equipment. So think the yellow machines running around. And for us in Lendlease, that's primarily diesel. So I think of it as two sides of the coin. We looked at all the different sort of technologies that were out there relating to construction equipment, so electric, both wired, battery, hydrogen, and energy storage. And we also looked at the different energy sources that were available. So we looked at electric grid, hydrogen, biodiesel, renewable diesel, bioethanol, and biomethane. And for us, the biodiesel and renewable diesel were more relevant because they can be used in diesel engines. So just briefly, for those that don't know the difference, so biodiesel is like a first generation biofuel. It's made from renewable ingredients. Here in Australia, it's made from tallow and used cooking oil. And there's 3 refineries on the East Coast that meet the fuel standard qualities that we need for our machine engines. We tend to top out about 20% blending with mineral diesel with our original equipment manufacturers. Which means so we can't really go beyond that. We can in some, but not all machines. And renewable diesel is a second generation, an advanced biofuel. And so this is used by using different technologies, but still has similar feedstock. So it can be made from vegetable oils, it can be made from used cooking oil, tallows, and some technologies can also use sort of cellulosic material, so like agricultural waste and those sorts of things. Renewable diesel is chemically identical to mineral diesel, so we can drop it in the engine at 100%, and it's very much more widely supported by our original equipment manufacturers. Our main challenge being is that it isn't refined in Australia, so there's no refineries here that make it. So a key takeaway from our research was that we're a hard to abate sector, and to achieve emission zero requires acceleration of electric construction machinery and equipment. So from mapping it out, the technology, the most promising decarbonisation options are electrification and renewable diesel. So our priority is to use electric construction machinery and equipment where they are available. Lots of reasons. It gets us to zero emission because in construction business we use renewable electricity, so we get that zero emission outcome. It's national. It's easy to get hold of as a supply of electricity, I mean. But we were actually finding that we get technologically constrained. So there's a lot of machinery that we can't get as electric versions. So our second preference there is renewable diesel, and to substitute mineral diesel where electric options are not available. So our plan is to prioritise and advocate for electrification, advocate for the use of renewable diesel as it's not available here in Australia, and use biodiesel now and renewable diesel as soon as we can. So I'll whiz through these slides. There's a lot of detail, but the report this is from is online, so you can certainly go back and have a look at it. So we mapped out our strategy out to 2040 to categorise machinery and equipment and how the timeline for them to electrify. So you can see here on the left, there's machinery like excavators and piling rigs, etc., that are using mineral diesel, and we can use the biodiesel at the B5 and B20 blend. So this is like a current day scenario with electric options there of cranes and concrete booms and small handheld handheld tools. And then what we're finding, probably not 2025 now, probably more like 2027. This is when we're expecting renewable diesel to actually come online here in Australia. And so I consider this kind of time frame as the messy middle, where we'll be expecting to start getting renewable diesel in some geographies, but we may still be using biodiesel, but more machines will be coming electric. So the models will be getting slightly, makes and models will be getting bigger. And then out to 2030, we're expecting that renewable diesel will be available nationally. So we're expecting a domestic industry by that point, and a lot more machines will become electric. So what we're expecting is that the battery technology will become smaller in size, enabling things like excavators to get bigger and bigger with electric versions. So we've estimated 40% of construction machinery by energy use will be electric around 2030, and that increasing to 60% by 2040. And I just want to draw your attention to that renewable diesel sort of column there. We don't know if some of the much larger equipment will electrify. So We don't know whether by 2040 what the technology will look like with batteries, or whether there'll be something else that we don't know about right now. So we're kind of thinking that the larger machineries, so the big dozers that need a lot of grunt, may still be on renewable diesel. We don't know. And you see there at the bottom is a generator. So in construction, we end up in this vicious cycle where if there isn't mains power on site, we need a generator to get us to then build the site until we have mains power. So this sort of will be another scenario where we'll be likely to use renewable diesel. So after that research, we got into it. We wanted to do some trials. So we started using biodiesel, Caboolture Hospital project, and that's where we first worked with Movement, because they did analytics on the use of B20, and that's on our website. Sydney Metro started using it. Oh, that project's actually about to wrap up. That station opened 2 weeks ago. And our UK friends were in a very envious position. So as of July 21, they set a policy that they were not allowing mineral diesel or fossil fuels to be used in construction activities. So from January 22, they have been fossil fuel free, which I'm very envious. The main reason being is that they have policy, low carbon liquid fuel policies that drive the price down that was mentioned earlier, that renewable diesel is more expensive. That's because we don't have a policy framework to reduce the cost like mineral diesel does. So it's not a level playing field right now. And as a result, we could transition the business. These last three I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail here. So Powerhouse Parramatta is a project in Sydney, or in Parramatta, and we used renewable diesel in 3 tower cranes. Now, the significance of this was that we actually, this was the first import of renewable diesel into Australia, and we partnered with New South Wales Government, Mar Contracting, and one of the other tier ones, Multiplex, to get that outcome. So that was a cross industry collaboration. And I say estimated 85,000 because that project's still in construction. It's due, the cranes will be there until the end of the year, and we're estimating about 230 tonnes of savings. So I guess the main difference is that the renewable diesel gives you that carbon neutral outcome. So we see renewable diesel as that transition to absolute zero, which you get with the electric machinery. So I know I'm talking mainly about renewable diesel, but this is a trial that we did where we actually swapped out an electric concrete pump. Swapped out a diesel electric pump for an electric one. And this was the first time we have used a electric concrete pump this big. And when we did the comparison, we actually found that it used 1/3 of the energy that the diesel equivalent did, reduced operational costs by 59%. We use renewable electricity, so it was 0 emission, and the pump actually costs the same. The electric and the diesels cost the same. So it kind of myth busted in this scenario that electric is always more expensive, and it had a cheaper total cost of ownership. And that publication is on our website as well, which I can share. Back here into Queensland, our new performing arts venue, we have used battery technology there, but also we did a trial of renewable diesel in a Liebherr 230 tonne mobile crane without any issues. That was installing heavy structural beams, and we used just under 4,000 litres with 10.5 tonnes of saving. So what are the enablers for us to step up the pace and achieve fossil fuel-free construction? Well, we need government policies and targets that send critical market signals. So specifically, the low carbon liquid fuel policies have been very successful in driving the outcomes in other regions. We need financial support that includes direct investment in domestic refining. We need to upgrade our grid and to support electrified construction sites. So as our equipment transitions, we then have that supply. And we need to advocate for acceleration of electrification and renewable diesel, as well as industry commitments around carbon reduction targets. We don't currently have those, as well as training and upskilling. So that was our research, and from that we have learnt that liquid fuels represent 45% of the Australian energy use, and that we're not alone. We actually, and this is obviously what today's all about, we're not the only hard to abate sector that can't electrify right now, or hydrogen, for example. So we've been reaching out and communicating with other people in the sector, joint advocacy, so road transport, maritime, mining, rail, agriculture and forestry all have these same challenges. And those industries that are all hard to abate, they represent 29% of the Australian economic output. And renewable diesel is needed to meet Australia's net zero emission target by 2050. We can't do it without that. So to get a domestic renewable diesel industry, we've been advocating for change, we've been advocating for policies. We've done that through partnering with key peak bodies. You can see them there: Australian Constructors Association, Bioenergy Australia and Property Council of Australia. We've been writing to ministers, we've been meeting with ministers, we've been sharing our research, we've been getting out there. That document on the bottom left, that's Australian Constructors Association, released in March, a position paper on renewable diesel calling for urgent action on policy. And I take a breath because we're really pleased to see that we're actually starting to see some movement in this space. And very recent history, the government has committed to supporting a domestic renewable diesel industry in principle, and they're starting to put some funding into trials and case studies and things. So it hasn't been in vain. We're starting to see the first steps of what's a long journey, but really good outcome. And to remind you, if you need reminding, that there's lots of other benefits to decarbonising. We get lower air quality, lower air and noise pollution. We get growth in local industries, stronger national energy security, and less reliance on foreign fuel. So it's a win-win-win. So I know that was a whirlwind. Here are I can share this afterwards. Here are links to the resources that I shared. Stop the clock.
Holly, I didn't believe you would be able to do that in 10 minutes.
I know.
Well done, Abby.
The challenge was set, wasn't it?
It was. So thank you. You've got a bundle of questions coming in.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Megan's asked in terms of, that availability of renewable diesel. It's
Yes.
the number one question that people
Yes.
seem to be talking about everywhere I go. Will the feds, what's stopping that availability? Do you think
Yes.
the feds policies and announcements a couple of weeks ago are going to change? Is there somewhere in the world where they all have it, where it is
Yes.
available?
Lots to talk about, and so cut me off if you need to, because I can talk for days on this. So the rest of the world pretty much has it, and that's been driven by low carbon liquid fuel policies. California, US, European, very successful examples of that. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We certainly can use that. And what that's done is that policy has provided a couple of things: market signals for people to build refineries in those countries, and also it's brought the price down, because fossil fuels actually get a lot of subsidies that people aren't necessarily aware of. So it's apples and pears, and that policy, those low carbon liquid fuel policies, have leveled the playing field. What that means is so we have a situation in the US where when we went to import, they didn't want to sell us their renewable diesel because they use it so popular domestically. They're using it all. They can't produce it fast enough for the decarbonisation objectives of a lot of companies, and obviously government policy as well. So we actually get ours from a company called Neste, and they are in, oh, sorry, I'm still showing my screen. Just realised that. They're based in Singapore. They're the world's largest producer of renewable diesel, and a benefit of you have to be a bit careful with renewable diesel because of the feedstock. So it's only as sustainable as what it's made from. So used cooking oil and tallow gives you a great outcome, that circularity of waste. But with Southeast Asia and the use of palm oil, we have to go through quite a stringent due diligence process to make sure that we're not importing fuel that has palm oil content in there, because then it's all gone wrong. If we're cutting down rainforests to make biofuels, then we've kind of gone past that. So the advantage of a domestic industry is it would remove that risk, because obviously we would use local agriculture, we could use local Used cooking oil. And if you're wondering what we're talking about with used cooking oil, just go out the back of your favorite cafe or restaurant and you'll see there's a drum out there, and that gets collected all across the cities and then made into fuels, although a lot of it is sold actually into international markets. So we have millions of litres of tallow, canola oil and used cooking oil go abroad to make renewable diesel and biodiesel. So we need it domestically urgently. I think you had a question there about will the current changes make a difference? It's the most action. Dia will know, she's on the line. We've been talking about this for a long time, and this is the most I've seen. It's the fact that there's a commitment now because of previous political political agendas. This has been a casualty of the climate wars. There hasn't been policy around low carbon liquid fuels. And I think that's been an extremely missed opportunity for the Australian economy, because we can build a huge industry domestically to get those fuels. So I'm hopeful. We've got a long way to go. We need to make sure our feedstocks are sustainable. And we've also got to still get that low carbon fuel policy so that we can get the investments, get the private money coming in to build the refineries, all matched by government money. Have you considered hydrogen? I laugh because I said this to these guys before we hosted this. I said the most common question I've asked is why are we not backing hydrogen? We have nothing against hydrogen. It purely goes back to our research. Right now, we can't. It comes to the two sides of the coin. We can't buy or anywhere in the near time future buy machinery that takes hydrogen, and we don't have enough green hydrogen that we could use either. So we don't have the hydrogen, we don't have the machines to put it in. So and as far as our research shows, that's not changing anytime soon.
I guess fundamental to the work that you're doing about partnerships and places like the universities provide really good research and data on what's happening in different industries. I know Dia is online. Dia, can you
join us,
share your screen and tell us what you're working on at the moment, if you're able to do so? Pressure's got to her, I think.
Yeah. So Dia's does a lot in the transport, so very much taking this research and lots of other research into that. So that's what I mean. If you've got transport questions, maybe she can't unmute herself. There we go. That's hilarious. Can we unmute her?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we gotcha.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is very interesting work we're doing. I'm completely from a transport background, but since we got together with Lendlease, we've done a lot of work together because transport, construction, mining, these heavy vehicle decarbonisation, they're all very well aligned together. They're all heavy vehicles, all use mostly fossil fuel like diesel and have similar pathways towards decarbonisation. So what we've seen, like HVO or renewable diesel, which we've seen, as Abby mentioned, that it is a great lower emission option during this transition period to 2050, because not just construction, even in the road freight sector, there are these what we call edge user cases within the transport sector that are very, very difficult to electrify. And we have partnerships and collaborations with some of these edge use cases in the transport sector where they are looking into HVO as one of the options. We can see this happening all over Europe and North America as well. You can see like DPD, which is like the largest logistics and parcel company in the UK and in Ireland. They are transitioning their entire truck fleet to drop-in biofuel like HVO to reduce their transport emissions in this transition period, while they're systematically planning the rollout of either electric or hydrogen fuel cell trucks. Just to add that yesterday I attended the media launch for Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, QFES, Australian first trial of 2 Volvo prime movers. One's fully electric and the other one will be running just on HVO renewable diesel. So we'll be collaborating with QFES on this trial to understand and evaluate the operations and the emissions, and if it's easy to transition their fleets, which are some of their fleets are these edge user cases and hard to electrify. So we'll see if HVO is a good alternative to lower emission. HVO is not zero emissions. I will not term it as zero emissions because it might be life cycle zero emission, but it's still combustion engine. So it's got a tailpipe, so it'll have air pollution emissions like particulate matter significantly minimized compared to diesel, but it's still not a zero emission alternative.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dia. Any more questions for Dia or Abby before we bring back all our panelists and go through some of the outstanding questions and ask some more? Pop them up. If I can ask all the presenters to put their video back on, please. There are a couple of outstanding questions. And I think the first one that I didn't ignore it, I just didn't see it, Bianca, and it goes to Mark and Matt down at BC Sands. If you had to do the whole fun show again, what is the one thing that you would change?
That's a question for yes. Good question. I guess engaging with the team to get some collaboration from everybody, all the key stakeholders, to get them on board, which I thought we'd done, but we could have done a better job on it, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And it's the same with our team. If we get great engagement with the team on the goal, everybody's looking at the goal and everybody knows where the goalposts are, and we work together to get it, that would be there. But yeah, we had lots of ups and downs and things that you can't predict that happened along the way. But getting everybody on board is probably the biggest thing that I would make sure, if we did it again, that's what we'd make sure we do.
Thanks, guys. The next couple of questions, Tim, and maybe Tim has the answer with his incentive payments, but there's a question there from Amanda, Tim, about the technology that was utilised by your company in the trials. Was it developed by you? Did you pick it up elsewhere?
No, the technology we used was basically built by the OEMs, fitted to the trucks. So Volvo do a really good job of that. Scania do a really good job of that. And it's completely integrated, whereas, say, potentially if you put some other sort of tracking that measures some of these other things, it's not as intuitive as the systems that sit inside the trucks. They're quite smart in the fact that they know when the vehicle crested a hill, they know when it was going down the other side. So they get some really good credible results out of that.
Bruce Organ had a question also for you, Tim. Was there much difference between the younger and the older drivers?
No, not really. It was a bit of a spread across them. Possibly the only comment I could make is maybe some of the older drivers were a little bit more set in their ways. Probably there's a high percentage of those guys that were set in their ways, whereas maybe some of the younger guys were a bit keener to bring it on. And then I think as we had anybody new came into the business as well, that was the first conversations we had about, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and so then it became a real cultural conversation with them.
I mean, some of those new drivers, Tim, I mean, you've been bringing them in for 10 years. Do you find that new drivers coming in have actually experienced this in other companies, or is it all like completely new to them?
Yeah, most times it's completely new, David. Yeah. I think it's the technology and all that exists. You can buy trucks with it all in, but I think the key part that's missing for most operators is that cultural conversation that you have with these people. You need the hearts and minds and souls engage with this. You need people to get excited about what they're doing there with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw there was a question earlier in the chat about using AI and machine learning and these type of things to help model and improve things. And You know, I remember from times in trucking companies myself, where even when you're measuring everything really well and you've got lots of data, and there's just so much more data these days to look at, and just getting the time and dedication and the reliable processes to record it, measure it, and then interpret it, and then act on things is it's a time-consuming effort, and you need to be dedicated. So it's interesting.
And I think
where we're at.
This one works well, David, in the fact that it's numbers. So there's numbers there. So it's no longer, you know, back in the early days, you'd say to the driver, I don't think you're doing such a great job of driving this truck potentially. Whereas it's like, hey, the truck generated this number. I'm not saying you're doing a great job or a bad job, but the truck says, you know, you're doing a great job, or you could improve a little bit, which gets it away from that conversation of going, well, it's a truck. I think there was another question there earlier. Was that?
It was about balancing your drivers driving slower and meeting customer delivery times.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because when we first brought in, well, we'd had some drivers say, if I drive how you want me to drive, I will not have enough hours in my day. And I had one guy in particular, he went from 1% coasting time to 25% coasting time. And I sat down with him and said, all right, how much longer does your day taking? And he was doing, say, an 11-hour day. He went, maybe 15 minutes longer. So it's all in their mind about slowing down. And some of them I had to say, we pay by the hour. You win, I win. You slow down a little bit, make a little bit more money, you save us a heap of fuel, and we all win. So that was part of our marketing to people. But in people's minds, they think that it's going to take them 3 hours longer to do this day because you want to knock 5 kilometers off. And when you really look at it, most times in a truck, you're not doing 100 anyway. So if you went, I operate at 95, the amount of time they lose is quite minimal.
A question for Mark Parsons. You guys are leaders in your own rights, but you've just heard from a whole bundle of other technologies. I'm keen to know where you're going next. Did you hear anything of interest today? What's on the horizons for BC Sands?
Well, I might be had my head stuck under a rock. I don't know, but I've never heard about this other type of diesel. We experimented with biodiesel years ago and had disastrous results with our trucks because of the incompatibility of Kenworths and Western Stars with biofuel. They don't like it at all. I think our Japanese and European trucks don't have that issue, but the I can't even see. I noticed, Abigail, that mini tankers looked like they were doing the delivery to that site.
Correct.
So you must have partnered. They partnered with mini tankers, and that was in Brisbane, was it?
Well, we've used them. They supply into Parramatta as well as our new performing arts venue. So they've done both. So we've partnered with them to import the fuel. So they've imported it for us, and then they deliver it to our construction doors. Yeah.
Cool. And
yeah, absolutely.
A price point difference because of the basis of it, but yeah, that's just what you want to do. Want to go down that path.
And I'll just add to that it's very interesting because yes, it does cost more money, but it's an assumption to that other people don't share that value. So in our context, we actually have clients who really want to do everything they can to decarbonize, and they are willing to pay that or partner on these initiatives to bridge that cost in the short term, not long term, but if it contributes to the wider cause. So yes, it is more, but my suggestion would be to enter into conversations with people because they may want to do something to contribute to reducing their carbon emissions. And renewable diesel is still an outcome, even if it is more expensive.
Yeah. So yeah, renewable diesel is very interesting. With Tim's presentation on because all of our optimization hasn't involved much of driver input, and we've got 6 Scanias and the rest of Japanese trucks that don't have that onboard measuring thing, and as you quite rightly said, Tim, it's not me telling you're doing a good job or a bad job, it's the truck data that's coming out that's giving you a score. So you're at arm's length from telling the driver we haven't really gone down that optimization. But I put a question in there before about idling trucks. Like, our guys seem to be totally oblivious of the fact that they want to leave the truck idling, particularly in winter, because it keeps the heater on and the, going, and it's like, mate, turn the truck off and start it again in 15 minutes time when you're ready to go on your delivery after your truck's loaded. But they don't seem to get it. So, and that's what I'm talking about before, about getting on board with, if we got a renewables target that we're trying to achieve, try and get everybody on board to say, this is burning fuel and we're not going anywhere. Like, let's stop idling trucks that aren't needed to idle. So.
Yeah, good point, Mark.
Yeah, no, there were some good learnings today, Lauren. So yeah, appreciate being involved. It's been very insightful.
No, we've appreciated having you along. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of our speakers, Dave for setting the scene, Megan, Mark, Matt, a few tech glitches in the end, we got there. Tim, Dia and Abby, it's been really good having this conversation. I think, we do. It's crazy that we're falling guilty of looking for shiny things when there's so much we can do now. And I want to thank Movement for actually telling me that this is what people wanted to hear and collating such a great range of speakers. They are our partner for this Future Freight Energy Hub program, and we deliver this with them, the newsletters and also the drive days. So I've popped a link in the chat. We are having a drive day in 2 weeks' time out at Gatton. You're going to hear some of these speakers and touch and feel the latest shiny objects, as well as these technologies that we're going to need to use in the interim period. So come feel and learn. And if you're not subscribed to all our databases to get more information, then please do so. We'll send you PDF copies of all these presentations. Slight omission that I have neglected to tell you, this was being recorded, so you'll all be featured in that recording and popped on our website, and feel free to distribute it around your networks. We are open to your ideas about how to shape this program and what you want to hear, what you need to see. So if you've got thoughts on where we go, if you think something was bad or needs tweaking or we need more focus on it, we are all ears. So with that, I'm going to leave you with 2 minutes of your day, and thank you for coming, everyone. We appreciate your involvement.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you.